Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Chris Mitchell podcast. Hope everyone is all well and good. This will be done in a couple of parts. David is obviously a very busy man with what he is doing, so we'll get another part. So, first of all, before I introduce him, let's go over to the co-host, Anglo Joe. How are you, sir? And been an excellent start to the campaign. We'll obviously delve into that in the second part of this show. But yeah, how are you, and how are you finding this week?
I'm very well, thank you. And I think an excellent start is probably a bit of an understatement, isn't it? I think it's gone better than anyone could have imagined. So we've had some real successes on that. I'm sure we'll go into it a little bit later. But yeah, just very quickly, thank you to everyone involved. You've done a great job.
Absolutely. Thank you to all groups, all organisations that's putting their weight behind it. And we've had a bit of success over the last 2 days. But David Clews, absolute honour to have you on the show. Thank you for having me on last week. I was quite nervous, a nerve-wracking start. I grew into it though. I thought I'd done all right in the end.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you for allowing me on. And how are you? And if there is anyone that's watching that doesn't know who you are and what you do, please give a little introduction to yourself.
Well, my name's David Clews. 4 years ago, my colleague Carol Pearson, who doesn't do as much now with UNN, we founded UNN as an alternative news network because we just saw what was happening. We saw the way the country was going. I was actually, interestingly, I was elected as a councillor in 2007 for the Conservative Party. In 2010, I fell out with them and joined the Labour Party. And it's interesting because I talk about this quite a lot on the show. You know, when I joined both the Tories and Labour 10 years ago, you know, they of course had their issues, but nothing like we have now. Like nothing like the insanity that we're currently in. And it's just the acceleration just in the last 4 years is just unbelievable. And, you know, politically, I'm not an ideological person. I think I'm a pragmatic person. I'm not saying I blow with the wind, but I kind of see where trends go. And I think what is right for both myself, my family, and society. And you know, that's why I find myself now talking to far-right extremists, you know, on a podcast. But, you know, we'll talk about that as well because, you know, since I've been involved with politics, the compass for what is the centre has shifted so far to the left now. It's just, it's unbelievable. Like the shifts that have happened in this country, it's just beyond anything that anyone recognises. And especially with COVID the last 2 years, I don't think most people fully appreciate just how far down the rabbit hole we now are. So, you know, UNN 4 years ago we founded because, you know, I wasn't a massive Brexiteer, but I voted to leave. I thought it was the right thing. The media tried to overturn a democratic vote. They worked with the establishment to do so. And 4 years ago as well, that's when the deplatforming started. It was also the arrest of, and I'm sure we'll maybe talk about him later on, I know he's a controversial figure, but Tommy Robinson when he was arrested 4 years ago. And basically they were just telling lies about him, you know, regardless of what you think about Tommy. When he got arrested and put in jail and he was banged up, you could see it happening. And then the deplatforming started and here we are now. And it's just going to keep getting worse unless we do something about it.
What do you think was the trigger point? What was the trigger points on the thought of like, okay, we need to start an alternative news network that you have at the UNN? What was the trigger point?
It was just it was that I saw just how bad the mainstream media was going, and there was no representation of people, especially around the issue of Brexit and on the issues of mass migration. I mean, if anything, when we first started off, we were probably pretty UKIP-y, I think it would be fair to say, you know, disgruntled Conservative voters, and I'm not saying we've shifted, but there was just a market for it, and you know, markets, you've got to cater to a market. And as I said, I covered all the Tommy trials and everything. We went down, we live streamed it, we covered it on YouTube, and you could just see the way it was going. And I think the real two triggers were Brexit and the election of Trump. Again, both of them didn't turn out how people hoped, but what they were was a shock to the system. And the system will not tolerate any shocks whatsoever. Same as Jeremy Corbyn. This is not to defend Jeremy Corbyn, but Jeremy Corbyn was seen as a threat to the system. Therefore, he couldn't become prime minister. So, primarily most of the threats come from the right, but even a threat from the left, no dissent will be tolerated whatsoever. You're either in this on this path or you're not, and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse.
Joe.
Yeah, I'm just in agreement with you there, David. Really, yeah, I don't want to go to sort of rattle off into too much of a long rant on it because we're short on time. But yeah, and I think you see it more and more where when these things started changing, I think that's when we started realizing that we don't have a choice. You know, we realized that, hang on a second, we can't actually protest about this stuff. They're allowed to protest about stuff quite freely, as we saw with the libraries and things, where they're getting quite violent and getting quite aggressive and things. We weren't being aggressive. We were being quite pleasant and, just keeping to the law and everything else. And these other guys were quite openly saying that, I want to punch you in the face. And it's like, well, you're breaking the law there. You're affecting our legal right to protest against this thing, and we do have these rights, and then you just suddenly start realizing that, hey, actually, no, we're not fighting against the left. We're actually fighting against the system. It's literally, as I said to you earlier, we have now become like the hated class, and it's like an openly hated class. It's like people are just openly allowed to just be as vicious as they like to a straight white guy, just because he's straight and white. And it's, if anyone of any other ethnicity was treated in the way that we are, just because of our sexuality and because of our race, there would be serious consequences to pay for that. But we just have to stand there and take it,
Yeah, it's correct. And, I think as well, a lot of my politics, I'm a Christian, and it, that again is becoming a hated minority in this. I mean, I personally think the way we're going, the Bible will be banned in 10 or 15 years' time because it will be considered hate speech because of what it says. Now, it is scary that it is accelerating so fast. As you say, they can basically say and do whatever they want because they're the good guys. Whereas even what I've noticed, you tend to find more with people on the right of the spectrum now is they'll recognize that their policies aren't overly popular, but like, do you know what I mean? Whereas with them, it's no, we're right, you're wrong, you're a scumbag, you have to be dealt with. And if anything, we're always told we're the bad ones. If anything, we're actually too nice and we're too tolerant, and that's a mistake.
I think that's the issues there, Dave. I mean, we only have to look at, for instance, with the Muslims outside the library. I mean, they're pretty much on the verge of calling for violence. Like, this will stop, this will end, this will end, we're going to do X, Y, Z. And it's just like, imagine if one of us just said that, honestly, we'd have had our doors booted in by now and probably be faced a few months in jail just on some of the comments I heard over. I mean, obviously they got the job done, but the words they use, we would have got locked up and we would have had police with batons there kicking the crap out of us. You only have to look when we protested against BLM. Obviously, I called for people not to go because I could see what was happening. You're going to get kettled in. The police are going to roll you up. They'll have their batons out. And then obviously the media the day after, far-right thugs kick off. It's like, no, the police enticed them to kick off, but the media were there to get their photos. Then they split them off into all separate groups. And then unfortunately, a lot of our lads had a good kick in from the BLM mob afterwards, that's why we call for people not to go. You could read it like a book with some of these protests, especially when you're protesting against someone like BLM as well, which can be a bit, well, they are a violent organisation.
Yeah. And you look at the riots that happened in America over the last 2 years. The country was on fire over George Floyd, and you aren't allowed to talk. I mean, you're just not allowed to talk about that. It's just mainly peaceful riots. It's completely insane, and I think more and more people are waking up to this and seeing it. And if anything, what they are doing is radicalizing people. Like, I no longer trust the system at all. I think the system's totally corrupt. Whereas 4 or 5 years ago, I'd have said, yeah, you need to vote, you need to be a civic person. Not now. And everyday normal people are starting to waken up to that. They're starting to see it. They're and whether it's being done deliberately, that's the that's the big question. Is this being done deliberately to disenfranchise so many people?
Yeah, well, like I know, I don't know if I spoke about it last week with you, but I'll say anyway, when the England football ladies won 8-0, their biggest win, and that should be all made about them. What a great job, girls. And straight away, it's like, it was too white. Why is it too white of a team? Why can't you just be happy that they've won? They've just made their biggest win in history of their football team, nation team. Celebrate that. We're in the final. We're now in a final, and they're still talking about how white it is. And I put on my Facebook, could you ever imagine the picture of the Cameroon team? Could you ever imagine an article about the Cameroon team?
Black, yeah.
It's too black. And one of there's this black guy that's on with me and him, we're always clashing because of some of the things I would say, obviously, and we always clash. But he said, you know what, Chris, for once I actually agree with you. So I think even
it's the same as like, would you say the Japanese women's teams too? I mean, it's completely, it's insane. It is insane. I mean, obviously this is part of a wider agenda at play as well. But from if you're looking at it from normie thinking, it's just mental. Like it is really, really divisive as well. And I see the UK going down the road of sectarian conflict. It won't. And whether that, I coined the phrase the Lebanonization of Britain. I reckon we will end up like a country like Lebanon. Lebanon used to be a primarily Christian country. Now you've got Christians, you've got Druze, you've got Arabs, you've got Palestinians, you've got Shia Muslims, you've got Sunni Muslims, and every group is just fighting for their share of the spoils, and nobody wins in these circumstances. It's hellish, and that's that. Or Balkanization, you could say we end up like the Balkans. Look what happened there in the 90s. It doesn't work. Again, people talk about how wonderful multiculturalism is. Multiculturalism doesn't work. And I'm not saying that out of badness. In an ideal world, everybody would live happily ever after and would all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. It doesn't work. And that's only going on history.
Yeah, I mean, you're even seeing it now with like North African Muslims and North African Christians that are actually coming over here and really struggling to get on with each other, because they're kind of shoved into the same area because they're just treated as an ethnicity rather than being treated as their individual cultural differences. And it becomes a real issue. These arguments are the things that lead to kind of civil wars in these countries, and if you think that they're going to have the respect to not do it here just because we're nice enough to sort of have them, you're very much mistaken, because it will. And the more and more that come, the more emboldened they get because they're creating their sort of their own sort of countries within our countries, aren't they? And this isn't me just being crazy far right, but actually a funny thing that you said earlier about a far right extremist. A far right extremist these days is just someone maybe with 30 years ago that just had conservative views.
Very normal stuff. It's totally right what you're saying there, and again, that's been the media that have done that. They've shifted the compass so far, and I mean, I remember, once upon a time, if you talked about, you would expect a skinhead, a guy going about breaking things up, whereas now, like the vast majority of people in this country are against illegal immigration, like 75%. The vast majority of people are against further legal migration. Like this is mainstream opinions and mainstream views, but they are suppressed by the establishment and they're suppressed by the media, and they've made it such a toxic debate. And even if you get involved in it with the best of intentions, you can't win. Like, people are just terrified to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I put it in. I mean, it's when you start addressing this silent minority, isn't it? I mean, come on, let's not beat around the bush. The reason that Boris Johnson got into power and became prime minister was on the basis of that he was spouting that he was going to reduce immigration to 10,000 a year, which was very appealing to people, and also to get Brexit done. They are the two reasons that he won by landslide. He demolished that election, and it was on those two bases. And those things have just, I mean, they've been worse than I think I think Labour.
I actually make the argument that if you let's just say Jeremy Corbyn had won, right, and there was thousands of people crossing the English Channel every week, people would be having a meltdown. There would be calls for the military to intervene. Like, people would be going ballistic about it. But because it's the Tories, oh, well, you know, it's these lefty lawyers. People have just got well, at least, like, I see that on Twitter all the time. Like, 1,000 illegal migrants across the Channel. Oh, yeah. Imagine what it would have been like if Diane Abbott was in charge. You know, it would have been exactly the same. But I actually think they would have been, because if you look at the statistics, there was less illegal migration. There was more deportations under Labour, because they used to be put under. I mean, that's not to defend either of them, but the Tories, the Conservative Party, in my opinion, is the biggest impediment to getting something that we need to make a transformation in this country. And if you look at across Europe, you've got the AfD in Germany, you've got the National Rally in France. And I know that they might not be perfect, or you've got lots in the Netherlands as well. But at least people with kind of similar persuasions have a kind of voice. We have nothing. I mean, like, even like UKIP under Farage, and, you know, you could argue that was allowed to vent steam. I mean, we've even been deprived of even venting steam. You know, it's crazy.
I think just going back to the Conservatives and Labour there, I mean, like, it was the Conservatives, it was Theresa May that actually signed the UN Migration Pact.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that's a big concern. But I think with the Labour, I mean, they're a little, obviously they're very bad, but at least they're a little bit more honest. They will literally openly tell you that we want the immigrants in. But the Conservatives, they just sell so much lies. Oh, we're going to stop immigration. And I remember, like, going on campaigns, and everyone was like the Tommy Robinson. When I was in the Tommy Robinson crowd, Tommy Robinson signed up to Conservatives, like Paul Golden did. A lot of Tommy Robinson supporters were really backing Boris and the Conservative Party, all on the promise that immigration was going to be halted. But it's just, the numbers are through the roof right now.
The Tory party exists to preserve the wealth and conserve the needs of a very small minority of this country. What they then do is throw morsels of red meat to the people to actually make them think they're doing something. At least the Labour Party are honest about it. You know, they're like, yeah, well, we want these people in so that they vote for us. And you know, whereas that, like, as I said, the Tory party is so duplicitous. But unless we can break this two-party system, nothing is ever going to change. It's careering down the road to disaster.
What are your thoughts on that, David? As in, like, are there any particular parties that you quite like the look of, or?
No is the honest answer. The last few times I've just gone along and spoiled my ballot. I think even if someone good did come along, they would just rig the election like they did in America. I mean, I think unless we have proper proportional representation and treat voting seriously, like ban postal voting, make people show some form of ID to vote, really make it serious, nothing's ever really gonna change. And all of the parties, like, there's no dissent on anything. It's just a blob. It's just this big blob. And I mean, there's individuals and people, but I just think that the odds in a first past the post system to overcome it are just so high. It's tough. And I think community building is better than trying to get political representation. I think it's impossible.
Yeah, well, I think you're spot on there. I really do, and I think it ends up hand in hand with the actual solution too. Because when you start building this genuine grassroots community thing, because it's not led by anything, it's not for money, it's not for fame or anything. It's just, come on, we're trying to go in a direction that's actually just better for our people. And what happens? I mean, we're seeing a lot of this at the moment, where we're being approached by a lot of political parties, and because of the nature of the INN. It's a networking thing, so we're happy to work with people, but we'll never work for anyone, you know, which gives us the opportunity then to put people in touch. And, you know, one party might not be, you know, as strong in the north as it is in the south, so therefore, you know, we might be able to lend support to people that are in the north, you know, and things like this. And I think that's a real basis for finding some common ground for not just individuals, but for organisations and political parties right across the spectrum, just to find a bit of common ground, you know, things that we all disagree on, and maybe start from there and then work forward. You know, because our politicians aren't doing a good job of it. You know, so it looks like we've got to pick up the reins and we've got to start doing this stuff ourselves. You know.
I think as well, if you look back to like maybe 2016, 17, the sort of the hubris around Trump being elected and Brexit, a lot of people took their foot off the pedal, especially all the sort of the QAnon stuff. People started just thinking that the hero complex, that, oh, they're going to save us. You know, they're going to save us. And the reality is they're not going to save you. I mean, would I rather Trump beat Biden in a heartbeat? Did I want him to win? Yeah, of course I did. But is he going to be the answer to everything? No, he most certainly isn't. And this does perhaps sound a bit more Thatcherite, but the answer does lie with the individual, and the individual who they then make. I believe family is the bedrock of institutions in the family, and then obviously communities grow out of that. As well, and yeah, it's complicated. It really everything's on its head.
It's healthy communities, you know. The trouble is we're all being brainwashed so much to think that community now means, you know, this big multicultural, everyone's happy and la-di-da-da. But really, the truth of the matter is, everyone on this earth is happier being with their own people. You know, it's a fact. You know, very small amounts and stuff. You know, I'm not against immigration and things. You know, I don't think it's necessarily a really bad thing, you know, to experience other cultures and stuff. But you feel safer amongst your own people. You know, it's based in fact and science. You know.
Well, when I go to other countries, I want to go and experience their culture, their food, their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I don't want that in my country. That's the beauty of traveling the world. I think, like, go and experience their lifestyle. Yeah. And their food, and I don't want it in my own city and towns, you know. And I'm a minority now in Birmingham. Obviously, I left. You know, I'm in a nice little village, an English village now, David. But Birmingham, you know, it's riddled with crime. You know, it's such a dangerous place for people to live. You know, riddled with grooming gangs as well. You know, it's just that's my city. Do you know what I mean? It's so disheartening to see my city end up like that, and it's happening not just in Birmingham, but like Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford. You know, many other cities and little towns are probably covered up in so many more that we don't even know about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I regard myself as a race realist. You have to recognise that there are differences. As a Christian, though, I recognise we are all God's creation, and to be tolerant, because I point this out, I'm an exceptionally tolerant and understanding person. But yeah, it's like the good analogy is, one of the analogies against sort of socialism is when people go to prison, they don't necessarily join up with people of their same working demographic. They join up with people of their same ethnic demographic when they go to prison. So you have to recognize there are differences, and you can have a debate on whether ones are positive or whether ones are negative. You know, that's absolutely fair, but I think you have to recognize there are differences, and there is the racial aspect. Then, of course, there is the cultural aspect of it as well. And it is, as I said, just different cultures. It shouldn't be something people should be afraid of talking about, but you are terrified into not addressing or talking or looking at that, whereas other racial groups are allowed to discuss that. They're allowed to celebrate it, and if a white person dares say anything even remotely controversial, then it's verboten. It's like, you know, like the troll, the thing, it was 4chan, it was it's okay to be white, and like the political class had a complete meltdown over. I mean, why have a meltdown over that?
Arrested, their devices seized, and everything like that. Their houses raided, all if they plastered that sticker somewhere. And you know, we see all this Antifa stickers everywhere. Nothing gets said to them. You know, pretty much calls for violence against racists. You know, and nothing happens to them. But it's okay to be white. Yeah, printed it straight in the front paper. Oh, look at these white supremacists. It's like, it's just mate.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand if you're putting up a sticker saying whites are superior. Yeah. Everyone else should be wiped out. I mean, yeah, I can understand that that's not really cricket, but like they're not putting that up. Do you know what I mean? Whereas what they do is they then make that connection that's where it then proceeds to, and I just disagree with that. And as I said, it's just creating a toxic culture of no speech, of no debate, of no dialogue. And what then happens in that is people are sacrificed at the altar. The thousands of girls that were raped in Rochdale, Rotherham, because the establishment covered up, the stabbings that take place, you know, people, naivety, people that just think everyone's your friend in the world. Everyone's getting, no, like I often talk about, you know, this, remember the story a few years ago about the two Norwegian girls that went to Morocco? I think one was Norwegian and one was Swedish. You remember that story? And they both got raped and beheaded by, you know, and they were taught and told that these people are really nice, they're really friendly, and they'll love you. Well, you know, a rude wake-up call. You know, they both got their heads taken off them in a village in Morocco somewhere.
Well, look what happens when there's terrorism here. Like, we'll just light a candle and play Don't Look Back in Anger. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just disgusting. Like, no, we are angry. This is happening far too much. And they targeted, obviously, no terrorism is good, but when they're targeting children, that's even worse. You know what I mean? When I go into a concert, our children are being blown up.
And again, that
light a candle.
Salman Abedi got away with that because people were terrified to question him in case they were accused of being a racist. You know, there was a guy walking about with a massive backpack on, security guards saw him, the police saw him, nobody asked him anything in case they were worried they'd be called a racist. And then the guy blew himself up and blew up how many children as well?
Yeah, just before we move on, I want to ask you a question, David. So in an ideal world, I feel like, so what would be the percentage of demographics of white British that you'd like in a country? I think it might be around 78%. That's just an estimation because obviously we are waiting for the census. We should be due out this show next year, I think it is. I don't know if they delayed it. I heard that. I don't know if it's true. But I would say 78-80% maybe is what it's at now.
It's like 25% of Britain is foreign now.
I think if you looked at Britain in the sort of the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was at a sustainable level. The people that came did integrate and it was fine and there was no problems. I would say, personally, I mean, I would say about maybe 10 to 15% maximum would be my take on it. I mean, some people might say that's ridiculously high, but it is a tough one because, you know, I don't know how you roll it back. I think there has to be a sense of, well, we have to try and start again, and we have to deal with what we have now. I mean, and you know, I hear a lot of talk about people are going to repatriate. I just don't know how that's possible. Like, I just don't know how you would do that, and I don't think there would be overall public support for it either. I just think we're in a position where, for now, and this, some people might think this is defeatist. I think now it is just trying to turn the tide ever so slightly and try and make things a wee bit better, or we just keep waiting for it to fully degenerate, and then what comes with that?
So I think, I mean, like, obviously you deport all illegals instantly. I think you have your full right to do that. Deport all criminals. You know, we're wasting so much taxpayers' money with all these criminals in jail. Send them back. And I'd probably try and incentivize, you know, the homegrown, well, us, you know, the ethnically British people to have more children. But it's a tough ask. Like, they've made it so impossible.
So expensive. It's so expensive. How do you afford a house? How do you? Whereas, and again, what you're actually suggesting, it would be like people would collapse if they heard it. Whereas you look at someone like Viktor Orban in Hungary, these are the exact policies that Viktor Orban is talking about. You know, he is a major European leader who is talking about the Hungarian demographic. He doesn't want mass migration. And, you know, it's not as if, like, Hungary's fallen apart, whereas this is a very uniquely British, American, and other places. People just have a heart attack, whereas Orban talks about it in Poland. They talk about the same as well. This, like, what you guys are proposing is controversial, but it's not what isn't going on in other countries. Again, it's just in this echo chamber that we live in, and in this bubble, it is, and the fear that's been created around even having these discussions. I mean, look, things might be worse. You know, there's always that argument as well. You know, dare you say, look at the way in which working class communities have been devastated and destroyed. You know, I live in Scotland. which is still predominantly white, but Scotland's a basket case. You know, this is the problem. You could argue it's the leadership, but I found as well when especially during COVID, when you went to more ethnically this is the other thing that's difficult during COVID. The people who were actually more awake to what was going on and speaking about it were people from ethnic minority backgrounds, because or they were from Eastern European countries. They knew what was going on. And again, this is just where I'm not saying I disagree with you guys or disagree with it, but I think the notion that an all-white Britain would be the answer is I don't know if it would. I mean, it might be, but I just don't know if that's the answer.
Oh, I don't think any of us think that that's even an achievable goal, to be honest with you. No, I mean, I personally accept you got to have at least up to 10%. I would have thought, maybe a little bit more, probably 10, 15. I think that's fairly accepted across the board. I think and you get into all kinds of odd questions then, obviously, with mixed racing and things like that. Where do the children lie on that side of the on that side of the argument and things? So there's got to be you've got to have a reasonable discussion about this, haven't you? If you start doing this,
you're never going to get 100% white. There's no.
So what you are heading towards is, and I actually think France is much closer to a tipping point than we are. If you look at France, you've got these banlieues where you have like ethnic gangs. These people are tooled up. They've got AK-47s. They've got RPGs. The police, like Saint-Denis, for example, or the suburbs of Marseille, the police don't go to these places now. That's ready to just erupt. I think if there is going to be major problems, France will be first. Because
you've got a lot of problems in Sweden now as well, haven't you? Like a lot of major problems there. I've seen many stories, like reporters as well, Dave, like go into these areas just trying to do some honest journalism and just get attacked, some of them raped.
I think the Swedish are so cucked and so liberal, they'll probably just go down with it and accept it. Whereas I think in France, they recognise it, and I think the military in France recognises it as well. I mean, there has been the talk of the military intervening in France with
Le Pen isn't she? Yeah. She's getting very, very close to having some serious say in that country now, isn't she? I mean, think what you will about Le Pen, but this is good for nationalists all around the world, to have this kind of attention, I think.
Yeah, and as I said, for me, it's just about looking at the way it is and the way it works. And this current mess just doesn't work. It's just everybody is depressed, everybody is demeaned. It's all, and the thing is as well, it is so patronising. Like Malcolm X said, there's actually nothing worse than a white liberal, and he was actually bang on about that, because it is so patronising and it's fake. Everybody knows it's fake. Everybody sees it's fake. And like it's such a dangerous route they're taking the country down. And what they're doing now, though, is they're just trying to censor everything. They're just trying to cut down on all discussion, all debate, because that's all they've got left. They can't talk about these ideas in the open. They just have to shut it down. That's all that's available to them.
Dave, I mean, I know you've recently been to Poland. I've travelled pretty much all across, not all across, a lot of Eastern Europe, like Serbia, Croatia, Hungary, Slovakia, maybe one or two more. I think they're very nationalistic countries. Like you go there and you think, wow, this is proper family traditional place. They love their country, see their flags everywhere. I mean, there is some flags here, especially in the countryside where I am, but you put them in Birmingham, oh, that's racist. You would not get that in an Eastern Europe. You see pride in themselves. And there has been a lot. I mean, I don't agree with you. I already feel a bit bad from leaving Birmingham to come here. I think, I want to stay here and fight until I die and still travel.
Yeah, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving.
So you wouldn't call for anyone, because there has been a few people that's called for people maybe to Eastern Europe.
I can understand why people would, though. Yeah. If you were young or you were wanting it, I would recommend. I mean, you'd even be better going to like China. No, maybe not China, but even Asia, countries in the East or South America. Even Brazil. I know a lot of people, Bolsonaro, etc., but even like it's just that it depends on what you want to do, what's right for you and your family. You know, what is right for you and your family. And you're going to countries that are built on family values. They are built on a faith that people can rally around, and that just makes for a more safe country and less collapse. As I said, Poland is a safe place. I mean, it's got its drawdowns, it's got its drawbacks, you know, but it's good. As I said, like, it's like I love London, like I like going to different places, but it's the fact that it's gone so far now. Like that's why it's difficult. It's gone way too far, and most people agree with that. But it's how do you roll back the tide? And you know, people are more going to these countries, and you can understand why they're going to them. And that's not to say they're perfect, because they're not perfect. They do have their flaws and their problems, but you will not get an LGBTQ plus agenda shoved down your throat. You will not have drag queen story hour in Poland.
Yeah,
Simple as that.
They will kick off, mate, if they did. I know you've got to go shortly, so obviously I want to ask you one final question on the UNN and then move on to the drag queen story. If you've got
Sure.
an extra 5 or 10 minutes, please.
Yeah, I'll stay on till 3, and then I definitely have to go. Okay.
Okay, well, we'll do that then. Okay, so just with the UNN, tell me what was your favourite guest that you've interviewed, or just name a few off the top of your head over your time in the UNN.
Guest. I mean, we've had a lot of really interesting people. I think for me, the most interesting guests have been people with a personal story, and listening to people. Like we had one guy called Tarquin, for example. I'd say he's probably my most interesting guest. Tarquin, I hope he's well. I haven't heard from him recently. Tarquin was not well. He was a father of children. He was coerced by the Tavistock Clinic to transition, and he told us the story of his life and what happened to him. It's just the most disturbing thing I've ever heard. And he lives his whole life in pain, physically and mentally, for what was done to him. He said he was encouraged, he was pushed to transition, to become a woman. They made him do it. And that for me,
made him do it, the establishment.
Tavistock Clinic, the Tavistock Clinic, which is now the centre itself has been shut down, but that's what's the word? I think it's going to be rolled out. But you know, we've had a lot of different guests on, and you know, from a political perspective, we've had people like Anne-Marie Waters, David Curtin, Mark Collette, and people from the Brexit Party, the Freedom Party, and it's just refreshing to be able to speak to someone that has something interesting to say. And I like to hear people that are interesting, even guys like yourself that just are going to analyze things out with the paradigm of what we're allowed to, because like humanity would never have progressed. Like if you were told, right, this is what you do, we would still be living in a cave. But the problem is with the modern left, you know, like again, we talk a lot about Extinction Rebellion. All these people, they want you living back in a hut, eating bugs. That's their vision for humanity. They think we're a plague on the world.
Thank you. Just a quick one. Is there a guest? I mean, you don't have to say. You can just say no comment. Is there a guest that you wish you never interviewed, or
no?
Or was it a complete disaster apart from the 2 minutes with me?
No, not at all. No, I've never regretted anybody, because their story is their story, and what how they interpret life and what they have. I mean, I try and have guests on to challenge the views of our audience. Like we've had people on from maybe Islamic backgrounds or maybe Zionist backgrounds or Jewish backgrounds or left-wing backgrounds, and that's always hard because people don't want to hear the alternative views. But I mean, I just like listening to different people. I mean, as I said, I don't hate anybody. I'm a very non-violent kind of guy. I just know when someone's, but I know the difference between right and wrong. You know, that's, whereas as you quite rightly pointed out, these Antifa people, I mean, first of all, these people can't fight their way out of a wet paper bag, but they have such hate within them You know, such viciousness, and you see it, and it's like the crazy eyes. You know,
did you see that video? Did you see Antifa with Mad Mick yesterday?
Yes,
Mad
I did.
Mick, by the way, hats off to you, sir, if you were watching.
He's done
Absolutely
well.
smashing it. Like one man soldier against all them lot yesterday was phenomenal. Like, but you see the venom coming out of their mouths, and like, and I think there was something like, I can't remember in that video. Do you remember what he said in that video, Joe, that Ragnar released? Do you remember? Something about some guy about
what do you mean, mate?
What's wrong with the sexualization of children? One of the Antifa says something like that yesterday.
Oh yeah, it wasn't. It was about sex workers, wasn't it?
Oh, what's wrong with sex workers?
Saying, what's wrong with children and sex workers? And it's
that was it. Yeah, that was caught on camera yesterday.
I mean, it's just. I mean, this drag. I mean, I don't know if you see the sign behind me. Our kids are not guinea pigs. You know, I was really, really heavily involved in the campaign against the vaccination of children. For me, children are off limits. You know, I've got a child myself. I've got a wee boy. Kids should be kids. It really, really is as simple as that. Once you become an adult, you know, I'm still pretty conservative on certain issues. You know, I don't believe in gay marriage at all. But what really, I think it's difficult with what consenting adults get up to. But when it comes to kids, this is degeneracy. This is vile. Children should be allowed to be children. A drag queen is an overtly sexual performance pushing an LGBTQ plus agenda on kids. It's so disgusting. And again, you go to most normal countries around the world, this just wouldn't be happening. They would be saying, what fuck are you doing? Have you lost your mind? Like, as I said, you wouldn't get it in any of the Eastern European countries because it's vile. You don't do this to children.
I mean, from their point of view, I mean, I've argued the toss with a few parents over the last few days, you know, on social media, and they say, well, who are you to tell me what to do with my child? I should be able to take my child to see whoever I want. I mean, like, so what's your reaction to that?
Would you be allowed to take your child to a National Socialist meeting where they walk around and give Nazi salutes? If you want to be an absolutist. Now, some people might argue, yes, you would, but they would say, well, of course not. Well, we can. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, of course.
That you're doing this explicitly because there is an agenda behind it, and it is an agenda that you approve of. But it is to do with the sexualization of children. And again, I don't think this is a left or right issue. Children should be allowed to be children. Yeah. And should not be involved in learning about all this. You saw Stonewall put out that tweet about 2-year-olds wanting to talk about transitioning. This is mental. Yeah, like it's completely insane. And you know, the fact that you guys are out, Mad Mix. Where's the Church of England? Where's the Catholic Church? Where's the churches? They're nowhere to be seen. This is vile. It's disgusting. It's despicable.
It's not even. You can argue it on so many levels. Obviously, it's disgusting and it's degenerate. You know, but it's on a level like you're confusing the mindset of a child. Like a boy could be watching that and be like, I love being a boy until I've seen this. Now I want to be wearing all this makeup and dresses, you know. So it's confusing their mindset. That they're only toddlers. As Mad Mix said in his interview, great interview it was. I think it might have been the Times. Sorry if I'm wrong. He said, like, look, I agree with like sex education from 11 plus. Like they need to learn that before they're 16. But toddlers, anything under 11, they should not be learning.
I mean,
they've already seen a lot.
Innocence of youth. Like, you should be allowed your innocence before you realize what the world is. It's that's what it's all about. And as I said, you know, biblically for me, Jesus said that if you harm the hair of a child, what will happen to you? Children should just be allowed to be children and not have. But it is a deliberate agenda that because this drag queen or whatever it is, because it affected them when they were at school, they want to then push that on others, and you don't have a right. You really don't have a right to do that. As I said, for me, especially when kids are young like that, it's off limits. It really, really is. Anyone, as you say, anyone under like 11 or 12, it's just a no-no.
Yeah, and I think that should extend to so many other things as well. You know, because we can see the problems that are going to transgress from this movement later on, because you see it happen all the time socially. Like in London and big cities where you have drill music, you have, you know, the fashion that goes with the roadman thing and the drug dealing and the cars and all that kind of stuff. And what do you get from it? You get thousands of stabbings a year. That's what you end. That's all that you end up from it. Loads of criminals and loads of people getting stabbed and being killed.
Actually, I talk about this a lot on the show. I do not want to see young black men killing each other. However, that's going to continue happening until people have an honest debate about that subject, which is fatherlessness in black homes, which is the culture that exists, a culture of grievance, a culture of celebrating, as you say, that. And then on top of that, you've got these liberal whites who consume the drugs that these guys. I mean, it's just so vile, you know. And yeah, you're bang on to talk about that, because look. See if that was 1,000 middle-class white boys at Eton being stabbed every week. You imagine that it would be everywhere. But you know, again, these people are expendable to the wider system. Instead of turning around and saying, "Look, this is wrong. Why aren't we doing something about this? Why aren't we stopping this?" You know, again, these are difficult debates to have. And again, this is a very controversial statement. Jesse Lee Peterson, who's a black broadcast in America, he talks about how under Jim Crow, black families were actually achieved more. They had their own businesses. And I don't agree with Jim Crow, but he said they had their own businesses. They you know, they turned up at demonstrations with suits on, you know, and you know, regardless of what you think of Luther King, but when he turned up, you know, they were holding arms, they were wearing suits, and they were praying from a Bible, you know. Optically, it was pretty strong stuff. So this degeneracy is just, it's everywhere. It's trickling down everywhere.
Yeah, and he worked on a cotton farm as well, didn't he? Which is, you know, he actually describes it as it was some of the best times of his life, like, you know, with his family, and they all worked together and they all ate together and stuff. I like Jesse Lee Peterson. I've listened to a lot of his stuff over the years, and he's got some really good angles. I'm just going back to that a little bit, just something that I wanted to tack onto the end of it. And it is really relevant to this scenario as well, you know, with the kids sort of getting into the sort of drill scene and violence and things. But what you have to realize is that these things didn't really happen before, and they weren't as bad as they were until they were making these things desirable to children. Because the big trouble is you get adults that are playing a game, you know, they're LARPing a little bit, they're kind of finding a bit of a culture. But the big trouble is your children at such a young age, their brains are developing, you know, so they're like little sponges. But if they continually have these things blasted at them from a very young age, by the time that they get to 20 and their brains are starting to fully develop, that's it then. That they are made into that thing. And the parents then are kind of looking back and going, oh, shit, you know, whoops. You know, now I can't turn my son around because I've been, you know, not really, you know, sort of policing what he's been getting involved in. And, you know, and it's the same thing.
And again, it's the priorities, you know, kids are taught, well, try and become a footballer, you know, and it's so false. It's just, it's so, this society is so false. And I don't think, you can't create the perfect society, but what I think is the bedrock of a society is, as I said, family, is religion, and you know, just simple things like, you know, trying to keep yourself a wee bit fitter, you know, and taking pleasure in the simple things in life. But as you say, you're getting bombarded and bombarded and bombarded, and that goes with the agenda. Like, you're bombarded over everything, LGBTQ plus. Like, I never watched the Commonwealth Games thing, but I heard again, it's pure indoctrination. And it is, and I know this is an old take on it. It is like the Matrix. You are plugged in, and unless you're plugged out and removed from it, then it's really, 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 really tough. And we're just not having honest discussions about it. And again, it's the establishment that it really is behind that, and the government and people who are quite happy to see this continuing. I don't think anybody really wants to make any fundamental change. I think we've got this managerial class as well that are just happy with the way things are. And you know, it's like, why didn't more people speak out about COVID? Well, because they earned 6 figures, they drive a Range Rover, they've got 2 kids at private school, and they've got a mortgage. If they speak out or say anything, all gone. Like, it's all gone. That's you. And what we're heading back to is neo-feudalism, where if you were either inside the city gates, where you got the protection of the Lord, or you're outside the gates. And that's what we're going back to, I think.
That's a good analogy.
I think as well.
I'm going to steal that.
Feel free.
I think, like, even if worse comes to worse, like, if parents want to teach their children, like, have their children taught by drag queens, then pay it for your goddamn selves. You know, save your money and do it yourselves. Yeah, what's doing my head in as well? I mean, I don't want that, of course not. But at very worst, do that. Stop using our taxpayers' money. This it's been reported he's getting £450 a day. Yeah, I don't know if that's true. Give or take.
This is being funded and using public buildings. Like that. That's again why it's if a group of parents wanted to get together and teach their children that, well, again, that really is a tough one. I mean, obviously you would. But what are they heading towards? They're basically heading towards wanting to legalize paedophilia. That's the end goal.
Well, I told you this last week on the show when they've got this new word that I've just heard, like minor attracted persons. Yeah. Like, they're trying to normalize. They're trying to now have a word for paedophiles now. It's just a map. Just a map. You've just been looking at my child and permanently, but he's just a map. No, he's a dirty paedophile bastard. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
That's it's like what I can't believe is that there isn't more of an uproar about this. Like there not anybody of any major status has said a thing about this. Like they just but I think, as I said, they're scared too. It's like people that didn't speak out about COVID or people that didn't ask questions about the vaccine. They're terrified. Whereas, I'm in a position now, I've got nothing to lose anymore, and I don't really care. And I again, that comes from a Christian grounding where, people were told you either bow down before your new God or you get thrown to the lions. And many people said, well, throw me to the lions. I'm not doing it. I mean, thankfully, we're not being thrown to the lions just yet. But like it is primarily white, heterosexual, family orientated people who are being viciously attacked and their lives completely ruined. They know fine well when people call you a racist or far right, they know exactly what they are doing. They are trying to isolate you and destroy you. And it's just and again, what I hate about that is there are different scales. There are people with different views, and that they just want to prescribe everybody. That's what they'll do. They'll just make everybody they'll say, oh, well, he was going to join National Action, or he was going to download. He would have downloaded that book eventually. That's what it's like. It's like thought crime. Oh yeah, but I mean, he would move on from changing the climate to wanting to go and blow up a mosque. That's how crazy these people are. As I said, I don't know how we reconcile with this system. I think we just need to build parallel lives to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm sort of the view that they've been the author of their own misfortune on this one, because they keep screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming, and it's like far right, extreme far right things. But when they start attacking things like COVID, which is attacking everyone, that didn't just affect white people, that didn't just affect black people or Muslims or whatever. You can't pin that on anyone. And then you come after our kids with this kind of stuff, and then yet you're still calling us far right, or or the whole of us are all far right now because if you've got an issue with this, you must be far right. Well, the big trouble is because oh, sorry, nearly swore there. They're annoying a lot of people.
Can't swear, it's my show.
It's your show, isn't it? Okay, they're pissing a lot of people off. And these people are turning up to these demonstrations and they're talking, and they're actually starting to realise that they have a lot more in common than what actually separates them. And now these people who had been initially divided and conquered by the state have now pushed it so far that we're actually pulling ourselves back together now, and we're actually becoming really good friends, and and we're building and we're networking, and we're putting things aside and saying, look, our sort of stance at the INN at the moment is look, yeah, we care about demographics and we care about nationalism, but if there is no nation left for us to be in, and there's not really much point being a nationalist, is there?
No, and as I said, I defend people's right to think for themselves. It is really a fundamental view that I have, that you have a right to think, because I do fundamentally believe everyone was created uniquely, and they have their own stamp. Think what you want, but when it comes to how you interact with wider society, you look at the values that built that built the European Empire, that built what made life get better. It was built on values, and we've lost those values. Things are not better now. Things are worse than they've ever been for everybody. This is the whole thing for everyone. Everyone is miserable. It's like I talk as well on my show about South Africa a lot. Now, apartheid, in my opinion, was indefensible. It was a wrong system. But look at South Africa now. We're going to be a rainbow nation. Everyone's going to live happily ever after. It's a complete disaster.
Mm.
And look at it, because everyone just thought everyone would live. And the media don't talk about that now. They don't talk about the rape of white women there. They don't talk about the crime rate there. They don't, because it doesn't fit the agenda. And as I said, in my opinion, everybody suffers. And the same as well with Ukraine. We're just going to keep sending weapons there, and thousands of people are dying every day. Well, why aren't you doing everything you can to try and negotiate a deal here to try and stop all these people dying? I mean, we're being run by psychopaths who, you imagine you were in charge of the country tomorrow and you knew that your actions were directly leading to the deaths of thousands. Would you not feel a bit guilty about that?
But these people are only caring about what's in. No, that's all they care about is money.
And yeah, it's worse than I've ever known it. And it is grim, but we need to just keep going, and we need to keep fighting for what we believe in. And for me at UNN, it is about creating a platform where people can come and actually discuss these topics and look at the reality of what is happening. Again, politically and what ideologically people want to do from that is up to them. But you need to know what's going on, or else then it's just going to be bad. Or you just choose to live your life and pretend everything's perfect, which it isn't.
It isn't, no. I know you need to go, but just before you go, is there any advice for anyone that's partaking with the This Ends Now campaign, or anyone else's campaign with the Drag Queen story? Any advice that you've got, David, for those people partaking?
I think I would just stand true in knowing that the vast majority of people, not only in this country but globally, would agree with you that sexualization of children is inherently wrong, and don't let yourself be kidded on. It's vile. It's complete degeneracy, and kids shouldn't be exposed to that. And just know that in your heart, and be true to yourself and what you think. And as I said, it's just insane. It is insane. I mean, obviously there's wider conversations to be had about the who and the why we're in this position, but just stay true to yourself and your own opinions. And if they're, sometimes in history you'll be on the right side, sometimes in history you'll be on the wrong side. You only live once. What you only live once. At least you're using your brain. Don't be a robot. Use your brain. Think.
Absolutely. Oh, we'll go to some final thoughts. I will start. I just want to say massive thank you, Dave. Obviously, you originally said half hour. We've managed to get you up to an hour. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to come and speak to us. It's been an amazing show. I'm gutted it's only an hour, so hopefully we can get part 2 done at some point. Just let me know for email or Telegram whenever you're available, and work some out, because I think the audience will love to see a part 2. And I know I'll love to speak to you more in detail about other stuff that was on the notes. That was on the note folder, but thank you so much, David.
Just don't ask me who runs the media. Okay, that's
who runs the media. Well, actually, that. But no, all right, no worries.
Again. My response to that would be it's complex. Would be my response to that. It's complex. I see like a sort of an easy solution offered to, and I mean I get perhaps the strand that you guys come thinking from, but I mean well, we can talk about that the next time if you want. I'm not, and it's interesting as well, like the amount of people who say they're on the alt side of things, but they would run away at that question, you know, whereas I'm happy to discuss anything. I think you should be able to discuss anything. I hate this, you know, there's just certain taboo things that you know, events or etc. But it's what it is. So
yeah,
part two.
There are some people on the right where it's like, we're against censorship. Oh, actually, no, we'll have to censor this guy for bringing up something that we don't agree with. Like, you're either for it or you're against it, you know. So
yeah, exactly. And I'm happy to debate on that, because obviously I don't necessarily share the nationalist view. I can understand some of the arguments that come from it, but as I said, I don't think it's a monolith in terms of thinking. But we can maybe discuss that the next time about wider media and geopolitics. That'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, well, we'll get cracking. Joe, final thoughts, and then we'll end up with you, David. But yeah, Joe, over to you, please.
Final thoughts. I've got to say this is one of my favourite shows. To be honest with you, I've really enjoyed this conversation. This has been really nice. You're a thoroughly enjoyable guy to chat to.
Cheers, Joe.
Yeah, I'm. Hopefully, I can be here for the second part. That would be nice. I really would like to go into some of this stuff with you, David, because you have a good way of going through interesting points in conversation. So yeah, no, that would be really nice. That would be really. No,
good. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys as well. I appreciate you bending my arm and getting me on. So see you later.
All right, David, thank you for coming on. Do you want to plug anything before you go?
No, just everybody just keep opening their minds. And, you know, I support all alternative media because people need to open their minds. And I welcome people doing their own thing. Stop watching the television, cancel your TV license immediately. I know hopefully none of you do, or anyone watching does. That's a no-brainer. And then you look at things like council tax, you look at things like energy bills, you look at everything that you're doing. Start thinking, well, am I propping up this regime? Am I a part of it? I know it's hard and there's a lot of questions there, but a no-brainer is cancel your TV license, stop watching the mainstream media, listen to alternative sources. Simple as that.
Okay, thank you, David, once again. Guys, we will do a part 2 very soon. I hope you all enjoyed the show. Please subscribe to the Independent Nationalist Network Telegram channel. You know, we're updating every day on the Drag Queen Story Hour campaign. We'll be also going out leafleting. I've got also, by the way, guys, I've actually discovered in my local area that there is actually a Drag Queen Story Hour that's gone under the radar. So check your local newspapers, check local events or on Facebook, because there might be a drag queen coming near you that's quite gone under the radar. So don't just play off that list that's gone around. So just keep looking at your local areas or your local regions, because there's 2 in my area that I only found out today because I was so distracted with the main list being put out. So I think that's why they put out that list, you know, like to distract other drag queens teaching in our libraries. So keep an eye out for that, guys. But yeah, have a pleasant weekend, guys, and we'll see you very soon.
Cheers, guys.